Hey,
Hey,
Danny.
Hey, Rafi, Keyboard, how are you guys doing?
good.
I'm good. How are you, man?
Long time.
Good. Yeah, it's been a long time. It's good to see you guys.
Same here, same
Same
here.
here, man.
How's
Yeah,
everything?
good, good. Yeah, hanging in there. Just been busy, but not a bad thing.
Good? No, that's good too.
Yeah, we see you
Yeah,
touring with Summon Fierce there. You guys are playing dates here and there.
yeah, yeah. We had a show last night. It was a nice little book release
Oh,
show in
cool.
Tallahassee, so it was really cool.
Awesome, man.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about that book and we had a question for you. We heard about the biopic, the George Clinton biopic, and we're going. I wonder if somebody's gonna play Danny.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, no, there is a biopic coming out, and I know Eddie Murphy is slated to
Yeah.
play George, which
Big.
is really cool.
Yeah.
Um, I have not heard if there's going to be any interpolations of myself or otherwise, but it's possible because I think they are doing kind of like his whole life. So
Okay. The
we'll see.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And so tell us a bit about the book. Well, what's this about?
So it's the Authorized P-Funk Song Reference, official canon of Parliament-Funkadelic, 1956 to 2023. It's a book I've been working on for 30 years.
Wow.
And
even before you joined the band.
yeah, yeah. It was P-Funk was always my favorite band ever since I was like 11 or 12. And I was really into trying to figure out who played and sang on what songs because it's the biggest discography of any existing or prior existing band in the history of popular music or music in general. There is no discography larger than this, and it's also the longest running popular music band of all time. So with all that information, or with those kind of bullet points in mind, a lot of people have graced the albums. And even though there are very set people who have been like the tenured band members, there have been a huge amount of people, session players and singers and all kinds of people that have been on the records. So I wanted to take it upon myself to try to document that. But when I was younger, I would be in class and I was just writing down who played on what songs, who sang on what songs, garnering it from secondary sources. But then once I got in the band, I started asking all the guys, tedious questions about nitpicky stuff. Who's this on this song? Who did this on this? Who played kazoo on this? Who's or whatever.
Yeah.
And and over time, just kind of kept collecting that information, notably through those primary sources, and notably from guys who are sadly a lot of them are no longer here. So like I was lucky enough to have joined at a time 21 years ago when you know 15 or so band members who aren't here anymore were still around and playing in the band, including like some of the most important guys who were really on the bulk of the core material. So I was able to do that and just ask questions and just recorded that stuff for 20 years. And then when COVID hit, I finally had a chance to go and start writing stuff down in like a collected type of format, and also began collecting new formal interviews, mostly with people via phone because or Zoom because we were on lockdown.
Right.
But George lives right down the street, so I would go over to his house and he'd be painting outside, and we would do hours and hours of question and answer. He did something like 20 plus hours with me of just of formal interviews. That's not even including the countless hours of me asking one question or another on
Yeah.
rides and on tour.
Passing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we really got a ton of ground covered with that. And then in addition to just George, if that weren't enough, I interviewed an additional 64 members of the band, past and present, in about 130 different interviews across almost 100 some odd hours of interviews, getting all the documented personnel information as correct as possible for these 850 plus releases, 90% of those are albums. So we're talking about over 10,000 songs in this book. And the original manuscript was 1,400 pages. They did a column style to break it down without having to cut anything out. So it's done in columns now, so that it's not quite as long, but it's still just shy of 500 pages in a pretty large book, like coffee table book format. So still quite large, but it really shows the largesse of what this catalog is and how big and important it is.
Would you say that this is more geared towards musicians more than
or even just fans?
or
So what I wanted to do and what my publisher wanted to do, and I spent actually 3 years looking for the correct publisher. And once I found them, they really cared about me finding a tone that straddled the line between the hardcore P-Funk fans who are all going to buy the book regardless, the musicologists, music researchers, people in academia, in colleges and universities who are trying to delve through this information for research purposes or for theses or for colloquiums and things like that, and the kind of casual music fan, rock and roll fan, your average kind of Rolling Stone reader, if you will, who wants to know about P-Funk's contribution to rock and roll and pop music in general. The fans who are the people who are fans of groups that were influenced by P-Funk, who found that, P-Funk is like that hidden influence that kind of created this whole thing. And they're just kind of casual lay people who don't know much about it, but maybe want to learn more. So I really tried to sort of straddle that line. It's never too preachy or over people's head. It always tries to approach it from a assuming you don't know what any of the kind of like important key points of the thing, but also allowing the diehard fans to have that inside, that inside information that they're trying to really search for. So
it's not just referential. That there is like some,
reading material.
Yeah, there is. So like the introduction, there's a pretty extensive forward. There's a section, in addition to special thanks, there's a lot of notes on process and how a book like this is created, because that's actually really interesting to a lot of people, not just in academia, but just creatives, people who are who are making things, whether they're artists or musicians or writers or historians. They're really interested in process. I'm a big process guy, so there's a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of information about the interviews and how those were how they were done, the history of that. There's information on the list itself and how the list was put together. There's a section called Criteria for Canon, and it basically just gives information on what was included and what was not included for various reasons. There's a small errata section. That section will get larger with the second edition. And then in addition to the actual referential part, within the chapters themselves, there are biographies of each group. So even though it's all P-Funk, P-Funk itself has become like a genre.
Right.
So you've got everybody from Red Hot Chili Peppers in here, to Snoop Dogg, and anything that was features members of the band. Johnny Taylor, Disco Lady, and everything, anything in between. So not just your core Parliament-Funkadelic and those groups, but all the spin-off groups, all the side projects, and any other group, whether it's periphery or a famous group on its own that's a separate thing but has some connection through personnel to the P-Funk itself. And so each group has a nice little biography, like a write-up about what the group is or what the artist, who the artist is, why they're connected, what they are. And then all the songs that charted, all the songs that made it onto singles charts on radio play or anything like that, have another little biography about how that song was written, why it became a hit, and little tidbits of information about the song. And then in addition, it also has a really nice full color spread in the inside of a lot of like rare, never before seen photos, you know, of the band over the years through the
Very cool.
from the 50s all the way to the present day. So 68 years of photography and information, kind of going through the P-Funk history. So yeah, you can kind of read it like a book too, but it is also a lot of general information. That being said, I had an agent when I first started shopping the book, and she wanted me to make it in alphabetical order, and I said I don't want to do that. And the reason why is because, I mean, I said it's already a reference book, so it's already, I don't want to say cold, but it's already calculated
Yeah.
and referential and academic. It doesn't need to be any more academic than it already is. So what I did was I did, there's two indexes in there. So if you're really searching for something, you can find it either in the song index or the artist index. But more importantly, the way it's set up is it's set up chronologically by band. And some of the critics were kind of upset at me for this, but I said doing it alphabetically does not show the largesse, nor does it illustrate the stylistic shifts through the chronology, because it's 68 years, but it's 8 different decades. So from the 1950s all the way to the 2020s, I felt it was more important to do it based on when the group appeared by decade. So you've got chapter one is 1956 to 1966. All the groups that started in those years, and when you go there, it'll take you to their whole catalog chronologically. So if there's a group that was around from 1956 to 1983, you can just go to the 1956 section, get their whole catalog right there in chronological order. Then it'll go to the next group that came about in that period, and then the next, and then the next. So it gives you a chronological look at the growth and how it shifts and how it's changed over time, because it's almost like a living organic creature. It's grown and changed, and it's changed with the times. So I wanted to illustrate that with this book to make it more alive and less of just like an encyclopedia, you know.
Yeah.
And what did you get like during this project? I'm sure, especially around the end, what did you get?
A sense of fulfillment once.
Not just that. What was P-Funk all about then? Well, what's the
Oh, like I get what you
you
mean.
know?
Well,
Um,
oh, what did I get out of it in the
Right, yeah.
final? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes.
So in addition to like the sort of important bullet points that I illustrated earlier, I think what it really is, and this is something that I've noticed as being the keyboard player for years, but was never able to truly kind of pinpoint and say, um, there's a universality of this. And you know, even though it's grown out of the strong African American musical traditions, it's become something for everyone, and it's become very transcendental, and it's been very hard to define by musicologists, but super universal for all people. So in a time when the quote unquote heyday, maybe in the 70s or even right before that, a lot of time they would say that Parliament-Funkadelic was too black for whites and too white for blacks, that it just didn't really fit
Yeah.
anything.
Well,
But
radio world.
today,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but today, in a time when lines have been more blurred with technology and the speed of technology, the speed of communications, the means that we have to communicate with one another, like the three of us, we're in two different countries speaking to each other.
Yeah.
This never could have happened in the 70s, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And now you have a lot of people, I don't want to use the word disenfranchised, but people who have felt like nothing ever fit just for them, that they were always to this for the that and to that for the this. Now Funkadelic, that applies to them. So all the people who once felt disenfranchised have this feeling of camaraderie and love for this thing that isn't easily categorized. You know, we're in the music world more than anywhere, really. In the music world, we are, mostly because of record labels, forced to confine ourselves within a genre, a format, a
Yeah.
formula. a singles market, an album market, a demographic market.
Yeah, it's all about categorization, labeling, just because it
Yes,
makes it easier to sell, right? From a marketing
of course, for the marketing's perspective.
right?
But P-Funk never really fit easily into those boundaries. And I think for the new human being in this post social media world, in this kind of newer technological world that we live in, it it rings true to a lot of people. And I think that's the reason why we play on all six livable continents. You know, there's not a lot of acts that can say that they sell out festivals and huge arenas in all six livable continents. It's not common. It's especially not common for a band that doesn't have a hit single out. It's not like we have some hit record and we're brand new. You know,
Yeah,
it's one thing if you're some brand new
it's not like Dua
hit.
Lipa or anything, you know?
Yeah, it's not Taylor Swift. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And and so, you know, it's for it to be that and have that kind of universality and relevance and reverence
and
around the
reach.
world, yeah, and reach, is really something that, you know, when I finished the book, when I started the book, I wanted to kind of prove that point. And when I finished the book, the first person who I really drove it home to was myself. And I was like, wow, this is, after a while though, it was so far reaching and so much, there was so much largesse that I was going down rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And I had to find a way to stop myself. I had to actually have a cutoff point. And you know, now I'm working on the second edition, and my publishers tell me I can't put it out for 3 or 4 years, which is driving me crazy because I've already found 100 albums that I missed that need to
No
be
way.
included in the next edition. Granted, they're not any of the core things,
Yeah.
but they're things that feature band members that I may have missed, 10 of which have come out since the publication. So 10% of that number has come out just since November. So which is quite a large number. It shows you the amount of output that the band is still producing. So yeah, it's a book that never ends. But
Well,
the
did you get
go ahead.
any challenges to
Oh,
the some of the stuff?
it was mostly challenges. It was I remember most days, especially the first couple years that I was typing it, that I was like where I finally decided it was going to be a book, because it was really just stacks of notepads for the longest time. But when I finally decided it was going to be a book, every day I said to myself, what am I do? Why am I doing this to myself? What have I? Why have I chosen to? But you know, doing the interviews with my bandmates, some some of whom their tenures are not connected to mine, where we have 40 years apart, you know, and they still feel like we're in the same band, like we're brothers and sisters and family. Um, they all expressed the utmost gratitude. You know, Danny, thank you so much for doing this, because who else is going to do it? They'd say, they kept saying that to me. Who else is going to do it? You know, I had just the right combination of band member, insider, being the music director, the band musicologist, the band archivist, longtime keyboardist, someone who studied under the guys, as we talked before, who had been in the band for so long, someone who studied under George for as long as I had, but also someone who came in as, this was my favorite band. And so I have the right combination. And then I went to school for history, so I'm a degree holding historian.
That's your
So I,
academic background.
yeah, so it's important. Legitimation, primary sources, that stuff is super important. And so I guess if anybody was going to come to the challenges, not to pat myself on the back, I think it would have probably been me, just in terms of this particular project. Now, the challenges, they were many, because there are cases where primary source accounts collided with one another, for lack of a better word. They, where they didn't agree necessarily about the same thing, and so I would have to use my better judgment, in collaboration with sort of majority rules, um, and find the best way to make it as accurate as possible. There's also cases where it was just certain things were just so controversial. There was so much debate where I had to use that little conjunction or. That or was a good friend of mine in cases where I didn't. People were fighting too much about no, it's definitely this person, and another camp was like, no, it's definitely this person. I was like, okay,
Got to be able
or
to manage that, mediate,
Yeah,
any sort of conflict.
well, in a book this like this, there's gonna be people challenging the info, the data,
Yeah.
So
exactly,
for
exactly.
it's
There's
just
already been challenges, but like I think that in the forward, I kind of vindicate myself in terms of just kind of being like, listen, this stuff goes like this sometimes. I will say this, despite the fact that there was some controversy, it was far fewer and further between than I expected. So I can actually name it was maybe a dozen cases,
You can
which
count it
really
on your
isn't.
fingers.
Yeah, you can count on your fingers. I mean, it was much less than I expected, considering it's 800, it's 10,000 plus songs. If you're garnering that, like the average song has 10 to 15 people or more on it, that's 100,000 plus cases to make or to break, and only a dozen kind of um controversial issues. It's not bad. But over time, I've heard some other debates, and I go back to primary sources to try to find. I'm like, somebody said it's da 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 da, and then a few of the primary sources said no, it's a misnomer. I promise you, it's this. And a lot of times, when they corroborate with one another, and I have more than one saying yes, it's definitely, then it helps me make a decision. And whenever there was too much of a debate, I mention it in the book. So I'll write, there's a couple songs where I write about what the debate is, and you can choose who
It's like
you,
almost take this with a grain of salt.
yeah, you can choose who you want to think it is. These are the facts, these are the debates. Here's the people it may be. Here's why it's being debated. And in some cases, it's both. Sometimes George would put two bass players on a record or two drummers. So sometimes it's somebody saying it's one person, somebody saying it's another person, and sometimes it's both, but they're both right. So there's a lot of ways to kind of approach it and look at the historicity of it and how to legitimize all those facts. But I mean, I remember I was in New Orleans the day it came out, and I was appearing at the New Orleans Book Fair, um, doing a roundtable discussion thing that day. And I had woke up in the morning. The book had been out 10 hours, and I got a call from a musicologist, P-Funk fan, P-Funk collector, who was upset because he had heard I didn't put his name in the special thanks. And I said, buddy, you didn't really give me any information. I'm not just like putting people's names on there like for no reason. I'm putting people's names on there that either gave me information or participated in the book. They had photo credits or, well, I have a much bigger collection than this guy, and it seems like you were political about this and this and this. I said, listen, maybe if you had given me information, your name would be in the book. Maybe for the next edition or something. I was like, wow, the book's been out 9 or 10 hours. I've already got people calling me on the phone. How did you find my number? Calling me on the phone asking why their name's not in the special thanks. I was like, oh goodness. Um, so it's, a thing that's as cultish as this is bound to have detractors or critics, but I'm really happy with the biggest pundits of the P-Funk have kind of all gathered around in support of me, that which makes me happy. So some of its biggest pundits and critics have come behind me and been like, this is a great source, it's a great resource. There's bound to be a mistake here and there, but Danny talks about how it's the author's goal to right those particular wrongs. And like I said, I've already got almost 100 pages for the second edition of edits. So it's a job that's never finished.
And for the first edition, like when do you call it? When do you go, okay, that here's where I'm gonna stop,
Yeah.
and
Um,
stuff for the second.
it's a good question. Basically, when the publisher starts getting really mad at me because they were they had accepted the book in April or May of last year, and they were ready to move forward with the copy editing and the production process and everything like that. And I kept adding edits to the manuscript, and my one of my editors was like, Danny, I noticed you're still editing stuff on the book. I'm like, I'm sorry, I just keep finding things that, you know, when you live as close to George Clinton and work with him, and he's in the family, he's just sitting there like we'd be in like a dressing room or in the van or something, and he's sitting there looking at me like this. I'm looking back at him. Going, did you get so and so, blah 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 blah, 1987 Arista Records? Like, what? No, what is that? Oh, you gotta put that in there. I was like, oh man. So I go back to my
Back to
computer.
the drawing board.
Yeah, typing stuff up and trying to find. I gotta change the artist index, and I gotta like.
Oh boy.
So it was a lot. I had
And when
great editors though at Roman and Littlefield who were very patient with me. I really appreciate their patience because it was a constant barrage of new information constantly coming.
and when did the book?
Officially November 15th, it came out.
How has the book been doing since November?
Oh, amazing, amazing. It's it on Amazon, it was #1 in R&B, #1 in music catalogs, #1 in music reference, and it was #1 in new releases across all three of those categories for the first 2 months up through the beginning of January. It sold extremely well in Christmas time, and we've already sold out 2 or 3 print runs. So it's sold out a couple of times already where they were like, yeah, we're out. We don't have any more copies.
Oh,
And
cool.
the publisher was saying it's a good problem to have, Danny. It's a good, you know, we're gonna get more copies, we promise, but we just didn't expect it to sell this fast. It sold very, very fast.
And so
And
people can get it on Amazon.
they can get it on Amazon. They can get it through the publisher, Roman and Littlefield. They can get it Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, anywhere books are sold, internationally, domestically. Yeah, Amazon. It's available pretty much anywhere you can get books online, and it is available in some brick and mortar places too. And I've just been telling people too on all the shows I do, if people can recommend it to their local libraries and their local booksellers, if you do that, they'll stock it in their brick and mortar shops too, which helps us as well. So
Especially CJEP bookstores, university
Yeah,
bookstores,
colleges here for
colleges
kids,
yes,
here.
for
Yeah,
students, you know.
yeah, very good.
yeah.
We'll put a list in the video as well where people can get it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And do you have any more questions for Danny?
In terms of touring now, tell us, you know, about upcoming shows, maybe anything
Yeah.
planned here in Canada at any point.
Well, it's funny you say that because right now what we're trying to do is, well, what I've been doing is booking promotional shows for the book. And what we're in addition to just the regular kind of book fair author appearances, I'm also doing special honorariums at colleges. So if you guys know any colleges in Canada that you think would be interested, let me know because we've already done a couple really successful college shows. And there's one on my podcast, Danny on Everything, of a show we did with George Clinton, 3 of the other members of the rhythm section, and myself, doing a special curated set of P-Funk music from 1956 all the way to the present era, going chronologically, kind of like the book, and describing the systematic sort of shifts in style and that kind of thing.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a really cool set, and the fans have just been very, very vocal about how much they love it. George, these are songs George has never done live, a lot of them. So stuff that the fans love, things that George is really passionate about. One of the fans was saying, "This is the most I've seen George sing in 40 years, 20 years," you know. And another fan said it was his favorite P-Funk show he saw in 40 years. And so it's really cool curated sets that we're doing at these colleges. we're also doing them in places like conference centers, and then my touring band Secret Army. We're doing a lot of these book shows as well, touring with the book and doing our shows and adding in a lot of P-Funk songs to add to the promotion. We just did a really successful New England tour in December, and we're going back up that way in September of this year coming up. But P-Funk is also still on the road. We're going to Vegas Sunday, February 4th. We have dates in the Carolinas in May. We have another date in New Orleans at the Fillmore, May 5th. There is talk of some more international work, though I don't know where we're going next. But yeah, trying to do lots of stuff in promotion of the book. And then also, you know, because you guys are Armenian, I don't know if you've seen this one yet, but this is the Sons of the Sun. This is the collection of all of my comic books, all the Armenian comic books in one graphic novel, trade paperback form. So issues 1 through 3 of Hike and Vahan and all the different stories that we have done. And first 3 issues plus bonus material. And this is available now, though there's only a few copies left, but people can get it on my PayPal, info@DannyBedrosian.com, my Cash App, which is $Daniel Bedrosian, or my Venmo, which is @Daniel Bedrosian, and it goes for $50. It's 106 pages, full glossy, thick paper. Spared no expense on this. It's a really, really nice volume, and so people can get that. And then also, if people are interested, I do have copies of the book. I actually have a special edition of this that has a special book plate that doesn't exist anywhere else. It's a book plate that we had put on for the release date on November 15th. It was only available the day it came out and has not been available since. So it's a special edition version of the book with a signed book plate in the front. That I'm selling these for $75 on all of my PayPal, Cash App, and Venmo too. So people can get the book directly from me, and they would get a special edition version signed, inscribed, personally inscribed, if they get it through me. So
put that in the description as well.
We'll put all this info in the.
Yeah, and one last question. We saw that George finally got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Did you get a chance to talk to him a bit about that?
He was so excited. Well, you know,
Anthony
like I said,
did the honors there. Anthony Kiedis from the Chili Peppers.
Yeah, it was really cool. And you know, George, like I say, lives down the street from me, and he is my wife's grandfather. So he's my youngest daughter's great grandfather, and really, he raised my wife, so it's almost like it's her father. So because he was her guardian, her official guardian. So we have a close relationship, and she hasn't been on the road since the baby was born, since before the baby was born. So I wanted, you know, his whole family was going, all the grandkids and stuff. So we said, you go, and she brought our oldest for an early birthday present. They went out to LA, and I stayed here with the 2 youngest and did daddy duty. So, but I was more than proud of him. He was so proud. He was so happy because I was with him the day before he left at his house, and he was just so excited, so over the moon. And I mean, deserved. In my opinion, it should have been 40 years ago, you know. But you know, I know artists that are far less accomplished than him, who have done far less than him, that got theirs way before. So
Far less.
Yeah.
Emphasis on far.
Exactly. But better late than never, and I'm super proud of him, and no one deserves it more than him. So yeah, it's awesome.
Oh, Danny was great.
It's always fun to catch up.
Yeah.
Likewise, guys.